review. Number one, elite athlete, high training age, okay? Everybody that would fit inside this middle left would be general population, old people, young athletes, older athletes trying to hang on, and somebody recently coming off of injury. Then that's 2 avatars. 3 avatars, this young athlete with a high training age, but they're not in one sport. That's where you go meathead. That's where you go hard. That's where you go North Jersey style of training that was certainly popularized several years ago. I think that it is fair to say that when you talk about North Jersey training, you should talk about a whole lot of other things that go a part of that culture that are not legal or safe. Then now we're talking about people that are currently injured. That's another avatar where you just build out exercises. Maybe there's another avatar that would be someone with a very, very low training age. And then we just look at filling in, I call it sim fit, where you pick whatever remedial exercise for push, pull, hinge, squat, locomote, and rotate. It can be any anti-rotation, locomotion in place, whatever it is. We're going to try to get to those 6 different exercises. I don't care how many sets or reps. I don't care what the rest periods are. And I call it sim because the first time we tried this was based on a current stud in Taiwan. I think the last time I knew he was playing, Sim Balar, who I think played 8 games maybe for the Sacramento Kings one year, and came out of Canada basketball, 7'5", well over, close to 400 pounds, I'm sure. Enormously skilled, incredibly skilled, and actually a really fun dude to be around. When we beat America for the first time in 50 years, silver medalist in Pan Am, I think in 2015, he's the one that I'm standing to and my head is at his waist. Part of how he trained was with this, I called it SimFit, because it was just for him. And that's all it was. And I remember the strength coach at New Mexico State or University of Mexico, I don't remember which one it was, that you're missing all these things. We're like, yeah, because we're only trying to target these different things, as well as a culture for this young man to begin to manage his health as well as his fitness. And we found that is a basic program for a lot of people that are maybe have central sensitization from a pain where there's not a whole lot of therapy that is, but you got to train. But how do you keep this as minimal as possible with no more minimal? So that's another avatar. Now this new one actually comes way back over here. As I mentioned, there's a athlete where I can say consulting, but I haven't worked with the individual yet, which would be Olympic level, Superman level explosive, where I don't know that most people have this awareness of what that really is. This is Olympic level, Sunday 100-meter, level explosive. And I don't think they're any different than explosive team athletes in terms of the initial core values, but they need way, way less volume. And when you try to train that individual in a team sport, see, this stuff doesn't happen as much in track. It'll happen sometimes, but not nearly as much because there's so much more control of the load when it's one person. Track has also probably got the most intelligent coaches, that, at least for my tastes and my biases, because the sport is training for them. So volume is actually somewhat self-regulating. But in a team sport, when you're at that level, where you need enormous amounts of rest and low amounts of volume to maintain something that we talked about in another recent post, where then you start to build up the byproducts of glycolytic activity, where if they're not in great anti-glycolytic shape, then you need even long rest periods. Otherwise, these soft tissue injuries start to happen. And as we know, in any explosive athlete, the only way to be an explosive athlete of any level is to be wired. Well, that can be genetic, and of course it can be trained. You have to have tendons of steel to transmit this incredible force through this thing to the bone to move in this explosive fashion. Again, there's a degree of genetics, I'm sure, but also very, very trainable. And with those two things, you must assume this increased risk of soft tissue muscle injury, meaning you can't be an explosive athlete and not have some form of increased risk of soft tissue. All the more reason to create an avatar for that individual and build out a model that serves them in this very, very unique fashion. So I'm not talking even about a 40-inch vertical jump. I'm talking about a 48 vertical jump. I mean, this is a level, I think you see certain NFL players, They would never play 16 or 17 games if their team was always in the game. Now, if they get blown out, or whether they're winning or losing, and said player doesn't get a lot of repetitions, it may appear that he's injury-free. They actually figured out this way, by hook or by crook, that limiting volume was the way to keep this individual healthy. But it wasn't an intent. It was just the game was out of hand, and to jeopardize a top guy who's eating up a significant part of your salary cap should not be on the field to risk any type of injury, especially in football as a collision sport where anything can happen. So those are the different avatars. And you see you've got some sub-1s. You've got the elite athlete, the very intended athlete with a high training age, sub-1, this ridiculously out of this world explosive individual. Then you have everybody. And then you have, out of everybody, you've got the young athlete that isn't intended for one sport, but is swimming in a hormonal profile that demands this type of training of hypertrophy, strength, and explosive power. And don't worry about anything else. And then, of course, you apply the same work capacity strategies that you would from EPP. Then you have people that are currently injured. Then you have people that are in this category of very, very low training age. Not that you can't use the MBSC Certified Functional Strength Coach model, but maybe you just want to hand them something that they do at their country club, and it's less exercises, and it's the right way to get them to transition into something else. Look at an avatar if you like a different word, but I work with all those people because all of those people can be injured. And I have to feel like I am serving this. And if it's overkill, that's why I land right in the middle, and I would give everybody the same program if I was compelled to, because they're all more really the same. They're all targeting a lot of the same qualities, but how do you package it to best serve that individual? Then you apply unique ways to do these things, where maybe if you want to train with chains, you could do it as a part of this other way. And if you want to apply a lot of these very, very effective approaches, complex training, triplanar stuff, it was most easy to always do that in traditional West Side, where you had the whole year to try different things. I think when you do an eccentric block, you do that very, very close before you taper. It's guaranteed plus certain plus 50 pounds, but you can only do that a couple times. Meaning like you're bench pressing or squatting where you do not have an eccentric phase, like somebody lifts it up off of you. You have to have a kind of a high training age and a very, very safe setup for those things. So anything you can think of from a training approach would fit. And of course, I've now alluded that I don't have nearly the amount of experience in training endurance athletes, but whatever tricks and modifications that live in those categories, you would do it. And you always would choose exercises that best serve what a tennis player would do, what a golfer would do, what a football player would do, what a basketball player would do. Picking the exercises don't matter in the way that I think. They're just vehicles to achieve the connective tissue and primary and secondary physiological qualities. But there are better exercises to pick, in my opinion. And then whenever you hear that, you also can go back to Bondarchuk and say, just pick your 5 best exercises, if that legend is actually true. So there's many, many ways to go about things. This is how I think about it, and it was just something interesting for me to get after, because there is that new sub-1 avatar where I have to explain why this individual is always hurt when he's a generational guy.